So, imagine holding a passport that gives you, like, the absolute right to live, work, and just thrive in your country.
Right, you've got the highest level of security the government could possibly offer.
Exactly. But then you take a job overseas, or, maybe you have a child while living in London or Tokyo, and you suddenly realize your kid doesn't automatically share that right.
Yeah, they aren't a citizen.
Right. And today we are doing a deep dive into the hidden strings attached to New Zealand citizenship, because it's a lot more complicated than it looks.
It really is. It's this process that sits right at the intersection of legal precision and human identity. I mean, we often think of citizenship as a simple binary, right? You either belong to a country or you don't.
Yeah, but the reality is this total maze of historical quirks, shifting legislation, and honestly, highly specific bureaucratic hurdles. So we're going to figure out what it actually takes to become a New Zealand citizen. We've pulled together official Department of Internal Affairs application forms, historical immigration legislation, guidelines from local councils like Invercargill, and even the mathematics of the government's citizenship calculators.
It's quite the stack of documents.
It is. And whether you are, actively plotting your own journey through this system, or you're just a born and bred Kiwi curious about how the rest of the world navigates it.
Or maybe you just love uncovering the hidden mechanisms of bureaucracy.
Exactly. Whatever brings you here, this deep dive is going to challenge a lot of assumptions.
Well, I think we need to start by defining what's actually at stake. Because in New Zealand, the line between being a permanent resident and being a full citizen is uniquely blurred compared to the rest of the world.
Let's explore that because, permanent residency in New Zealand is an incredibly generous status.
Oh, absolutely.
If you hold PR, you can live in the country indefinitely. You have no restrictions on where you work. You get subsidized public health care. Your kids get domestic education rates. And you essentially just live a completely normal Kiwi life.
And the most surprising element of that normal life is democratic participation.
Yes, this part is wild.
Right. After just 12 months of continuous residence in New Zealand, a permanent resident is legally required to enroll to vote. And they can cast a ballot in both local council elections and general parliamentary elections.
That blows my mind. You can actively choose the prime minister of a country where you aren't even a citizen.
It is exceptionally rare globally. But the philosophy there is tied to taxation and community integration.
Right.
If you're living there, paying taxes, and contributing to the economy, the system dictates that you should have a voice in how that society is run, regardless of what passport is in your drawer.
So it forces a really obvious question. If you already have the right to live, work, get healthcare, and vote, why would anyone go through the massive hassle and expense of applying for citizenship?
It's a fair question.
I look at permanent residency like having a really fantastic long-term lease on a house. Like you can paint the walls, you can plant a garden, you can send your kids to the school down the street.
Right, it feels like yours.
Exactly. But tucked into the very back pages of that rental contract is an eviction clause. Citizenship is buying the house outright. You hold the deed.
That eviction clause is the defining difference. In legal terms, it's deportation.
Right.
As long as you are a permanent resident, your right to remain is conditional on your behavior. So if you commit a crime and are convicted with a sentence of 2 years or more...
Or what if they find out you lied on your visa?
Exactly. If the government discovers you obtained your original visa through fraudulent means, or if you're deemed a threat to national security, the state can absolutely revoke your residency and deport you.
But once you hold the deed, like once you have the actual citizenship certificate...
Absolute security of tenure. A New Zealand citizen can never be deported from New Zealand under any circumstances.
Wow.
Yeah, the state cannot exile its own citizens.
So aside from never being kicked out of the house, holding the deed gives you a massive upgrade in how you move around the neighborhood. Or, well, the globe in this case.
Right, because a permanent resident still travels on their home country's passport.
Which can be a huge pain. If you're from a country with a weak passport, you're still applying for tourist visas just to take a quick holiday to Europe or wherever.
Exactly. But the New Zealand passport provides visa-free or visa-on-arrival access to over 180 countries.
That's huge.
And it comes with the backing of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. If a pandemic breaks out or a natural disaster hits while you're overseas, you have the full weight of New Zealand consular assistance working to get you to safety.
And then there is the Australian factor. I mean, the Trans-Tasman Advantage is probably the biggest perk of the New Zealand passport, right?
Well, without a doubt.
If you are a New Zealand citizen, you can jump on a plane, land in Sydney or Melbourne, and you're automatically granted a special category visa, the subclass 444.
Which allows you to live and work in Australia indefinitely.
Right. And permanent residents of New Zealand do not get that at all. They have to apply for Australian visas through the standard, heavily scrutinized immigration channels.
And that Australian pathway has become significantly more valuable recently, too.
Oh, because of the 2023 changes.
Exactly. As of July 2023, the Australian government changed its laws. Now, New Zealand citizens who have lived in Australia on that subclass 444 visa for 4 years can apply directly for Australian citizenship.
Directly. They don't need permanent residency first.
Nope. They skip the entire Australian permanent residency stage, which saves literally years of waiting and thousands of dollars.
Okay, so the value of the house is undeniable. Absolute security, global mobility, and an open door to Australia. The question then becomes, how do you get the keys?
Well, it turns out, depending on your birth date, the government might have already handed them to you.
Right, because citizenship by birth used to be incredibly straightforward in New Zealand. Like, if you were physically born on New Zealand soil, you were a citizen.
Yes, this is a concept known in international law as jus soli, or right of the soil.
But the legislation shows a massive pivot that happened on January 1st, 2006.
It was a huge change.
Yeah. If you were born in New Zealand before that date, you are automatically a citizen. Just breathing the air on day one was enough. But if you were born on or after January 1st, 2006, simply being born on the soil doesn't cut it anymore.
The government fundamentally shifted its philosophy there. They moved away from strict jus soli to require a genuine, established link to the country.
So what's the actual requirement now?
For anyone born from 2006 onwards, at least one of their parents had to be a New Zealand citizen or hold a visa that allowed them to live in New Zealand indefinitely, like permanent residency.
So why the sudden shift? I mean, why change a rule that had been around forever?
It was largely about aligning with Australia and the UK, both of which had already tightened their laws. But it was also about addressing concerns over birth tourism.
Oh, right.
People were arriving on short-term tourist or student visas, having a child who automatically received citizenship, and then using that child's status to anchor their own future residency claims.
I see.
So the 2006 change closed that loophole. The law now requires the parent to have a permanent stake in the country before the child can inherit citizenship by birth.
That makes logical sense for people physically inside the borders. But what happens if a New Zealand citizen, like someone who meets all the criteria, has a passport, moves to London for work, and has a baby there? Does the baby get the passport?
They do, through a pathway called citizenship by descent. A New Zealand citizen can register their overseas-born child, and that child becomes a citizen.
So they don't even need to have set foot in New Zealand to get the passport?
Not at all.
Wait, okay, if I'm a citizen by descent, and I grow up in London, and then I have a child in London, is that child a Kiwi too? Because if so, couldn't you just have generations of people who have never seen New Zealand holding the passport?
You've hit on the exact mechanism the government uses to prevent that. The law introduces a generational circuit breaker.
A circuit breaker.
Yeah. If you are a citizen by descent, meaning you got your citizenship because your parent was a Kiwi, but you were born overseas, you cannot automatically pass that citizenship on to your own overseas-born children.
Oh, wow. So it's essentially a one-generation-only coupon for living abroad.
That's a great way to put it.
The government is basically saying, we acknowledge your parents' tie to the country, so you get a passport.
Yeah.
But if you want your kids to have it, you need to bring them back to New Zealand and prove your own ties.
Exactly. It forces the diaspora to periodically reconnect with the physical nation. If that second generation wants citizenship, they have to migrate to New Zealand, gain residency, and apply for citizenship by grant, just like anyone else.
It is fascinating to see how the 2006 birth rule and the descent rule are both designed to so tightly control who gets to claim the national identity.
But, when you look at immigration law, it isn't always about restriction. Sometimes it's actually about retrospective apologies.
Yes. And the source documents highlight a really profound example of this. The Citizenship Western Samoa Restoration Amendment Bill.
Right, which was just passed into law in November 2024.
Now, to understand why this law exists, we really have to look back. The new bill restores citizenship rights to people born in Western Samoa between May 13, 1924 and January 1, 1949. Why those specific dates?
Well, those dates correspond to the period when New Zealand administered Western Samoa under a League of Nations mandate and later a United Nations trusteeship.
Okay.
And the legal complexities of that era really came to a head in 1982 in a landmark legal case known as Lessa v. Attorney General.
Right, the Privy Council case.
Exactly. A Samoan citizen named Falima Lessa appealed her overstayer status all the way to the Privy Council in London, which at the time was New Zealand's highest court of appeal.
And the court made a massive ruling, didn't they?
They did. They ruled that because New Zealand administered Western Samoa during that 1924 to 1949 window, anyone born there during that time was technically a British subject, and therefore under New Zealand law, they were New Zealand citizens.
Wow.
The ruling effectively meant that an estimated 100,000 Samoans were instantly recognized as New Zealand citizens.
And according to the historical accounts, the government of the day panicked.
Oh, completely. Within weeks, the New Zealand and Samoan governments signed a protocol, and New Zealand rapidly passed the Citizenship Western Samoa Act, 1982.
And that act explicitly overturned the Privy Council's ruling, right?
Yes. It stripped those individuals of the citizenship the court had just confirmed they held.
So fast forward to November 2024, and the government is finally unraveling that 1982 decision. The Restoration Bill targets those specific individuals born between 1924 and 1949 who had their rights removed.
And it affects around 3,500 people who are still alive today.
Just sticking to the facts from the legislation, the mechanics of the restoration are heavily focused on removing barriers, aren't they?
Very much so. Eligible individuals can apply directly to the Department of Internal Affairs, either by mail or at the New Zealand High Commission in Apia. And a critical detail is that if the application is successful, the standard processing fee is fully refunded.
It changes the course of families' lives overnight. But it also demonstrates that the bureaucracy isn't purely forward-looking. The forms and the laws can be used to acknowledge historical events and actively repair them.
Yeah, for the thousands of people impacted, it is a restoration of identity. But for the vast majority of people migrating to New Zealand today, they don't have a historical claim, they weren't born on the soil, and they don't have a Kiwi parent.
Which brings us to the most common pathway, and honestly, the giant stack of paperwork sitting in front of us. Form GNT-002.
The application for New Zealand citizenship by grant.
If you want to buy the house, this is the mortgage application.
Exactly. And the primary metric the Department of Internal Affairs looks at here is physical presence. You must have been present in New Zealand as a resident for at least 4,350 days during the 5 years immediately preceding your application.
So if you do the math on 3,350 days, that is roughly 3.7 years out of the 5.
Yes, but they break it down even further. You also need to have been physically in the country for at least 240 days in each of those 5 individual years.
Wait, so you can't just bunch all your days together at the end?
Nope. That 240-day minimum per year is crucial. It stops someone from gaining residency, spending 4 years living and working in Dubai, and then just spending 1 solid year in Auckland to hit a total day count.
I see that.
The government wants to see a consistent, unbroken thread of your life being centered in New Zealand.
Okay, that makes sense. And you also have to pay a processing fee of $560 per adult, right?
Correct. And children under 16 can be included on a parent's application for $280.
And I noticed that if your application is declined, they do refund $375.20 of the adult fee. But honestly, looking at forms and guidelines, the money and the math are just the baseline. The real anxiety for most applicants centers on the language requirement.
Oh, definitely. There is this pervasive myth that applying for citizenship requires sitting in an exam hall, sweating over a formal academic English test, like the IELTS or the Pearson PTE.
Which are often required for skilled visas, right? I totally assume there was a rigorous grammar test for citizenship, too.
A lot of people do. But the Department of Internal Affairs approach is completely different. The Citizenship Act only requires an applicant to have, quote, sufficient knowledge of the English language.
And the way they test that sufficient knowledge is highly pragmatic. There is no written exam at all.
Right. The DIA assesses your English through your ability to complete the application form and, if necessary, through a basic conversational phone interview.
Wait, so they just call you up and chat?
Basically, yes. A case officer might call to verify details about your employment, your neighborhood, or your travel history. They aren't grading your syntax. They're assessing whether you can function independently in New Zealand society.
Can you talk to a doctor? Can you communicate with your child's teacher?
Exactly. Can you handle an emergency? If you can hold that basic conversation, you meet the standard.
It's an incredibly refreshing approach, testing for real-world integration rather than academic perfection.
And there are common sense exemptions, too. Like if you are 65 or older, you do not have to meet the English requirement at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The same applies if you have a medical condition, validated by a doctor, of course, that prevents you from learning the language.
That's very compassionate. Now, alongside the language test is the character requirement. Form GNT002 requires applicants to declare all global criminal convictions, regardless of how minor they might seem or how long ago they occurred.
Yes, and it goes beyond police records, too. You have to declare if you are currently under investigation by any agency, and crucially, you have to declare any debts to the New Zealand government.
Right, the application explicitly mentions things like overpayments from work and income, or WINZ.
The DIA works very closely with other government agencies. So if you received a benefit overpayment, even accidentally, and you failed to disclose it on your citizenship application, that omission is viewed as a character flaw.
Because it looks like you're hiding it.
Exactly. Honesty is paramount. If you have a debt, but you have established a repayment plan and are meeting those obligations, you simply provide the proof, and it rarely hinders your application.
No, to verify your identity and back up your claim of good character, you have to find a witness. Section 10 of the form dictates that you need someone to vouch for you, but it can't just be a family member or someone living in your house.
No, the witness must hold a current New Zealand passport, be at least 16 years old, and have known you personally for a minimum of 1 year.
My favorite detail in this entire bureaucratic process is how the witness verifies you.
The photo part.
Yes. In an era where everything is submitted through online portals and digital identity checkers, the DIA requires your witness to take a physical, printed passport photo of you, turn it over, and write your name, sign their own name, and date it with a pen.
Is very old school.
Right. There is something delightfully tactile and serious about someone physically holding your photo and signing their name to say, yes, this is who they claim to be.
It creates a chain of personal accountability. The state is asking an existing citizen to formally invite you into the fold.
I love that. So, okay, let's say you meet the physical presence test. You pass the conversational English check. You disclose everything, pay the fee, and your witness signs the photo. You are ready to send the application.
But before you do, you have to face what is arguably the most difficult part of the journey.
The dual citizenship dilemma.
Exactly. Because taking on a new nationality fundamentally alters your legal relationship with the world, and specifically with the country you were born in.
Now, from the New Zealand side, there is no dilemma. The documents show the law changed in 2002 to allow dual citizenship without any restrictions. New Zealand does not ask you to renounce your original passport to become a Kiwi.
Right. They recognize that in a globalized world, people have multiple loyalties and ties. The friction comes entirely from the laws of the applicant's home country.
Because many nations do not recognize dual citizenship at all.
Exactly.
If you are from the UK or the US or Australia, you can hold both passports. You can kind of collect them like trading cards. Though it's worth noting that if you keep a U.S. passport, the IRS still requires you to file global taxes every year, regardless of where you live.
A painful detail for many, yeah.
Truly. But if you are a citizen of India, China, or Japan, for example, your home country's laws strictly forbid dual nationality.
For applicants from those countries, the moment they are granted New Zealand citizenship, they automatically forfeit their original citizenship. They lose their original passport.
To bring it back to our earlier analogy, it's like being told you can finally have the deed to your new house, but to accept it, you have to legally burn the deed to your childhood home.
That's a heavy choice.
How do you make that choice? You are trading absolute security in New Zealand for the potential loss of your right of return to the country of your birth. Suddenly, the $560 application fee feels entirely insignificant compared to the emotional and legal toll of that decision.
It's a profound sacrifice.
Yeah.
And even for those who can hold dual citizenship, there is a legal concept they need to be aware of called the master nationality rule.
Oh, what's that?
Well, if you hold both a New Zealand passport and a British passport and you travel to the UK views you solely as a British citizen while you are on their soil.
Meaning New Zealand's ability to help you is restricted?
Precisely. The New Zealand embassy cannot intervene in legal matters on your behalf in a country where you are also a citizen. Your consular safety net only extends to third-party countries.
Wow. Okay, so let's assume you've navigated that dilemma, you've made the hard choice, you've submitted the paperwork, the DIA has run their background checks, and you receive the approval letter in the mail.
Congratulations.
But you don't receive the actual citizenship certificate in that envelope. You aren't quite a citizen yet.
No, you're not. The final, non-negotiable step in the process is attending a formal citizenship ceremony.
You can't just opt out.
You cannot simply opt out. If you do not attend and take the oath, The grant of citizenship is not finalized.
We looked at the guidelines from the Invercargill City Council to see how these events operate, because the DIA delegates the hosting of these ceremonies to local mayors and councils.
Right, and it takes about an hour. The dress code is smart casual, though they highly encourage people to wear traditional or cultural dress, and you can bring 2 guests to watch.
And the underlying theme of the ceremony, at least in the Invercargill guidelines, is Manakitanga.
The Maori concept of hospitality, respect, and care for others.
Yeah, the council explicitly uses this term to frame the event. I think it elevates the process from a sterile legal transaction to a real communal welcome.
It does. And the climax of the ceremony is when you publicly declare your allegiance. Before the mayor hands you the certificate, you must recite either an oath or an affirmation of allegiance to His Majesty the King in right of New Zealand.
You have a choice in how you do this, right? The oath is religious, typically sworn on a holy book, and ends with, "So help me God."
Correct. And the affirmation is a completely secular, non-religious declaration.
And you can choose to recite either of them in English or in Te Reo Maori. It's a moment of immense personal significance, standing in front of your community and formalizing that bond.
When we pull all of these threads together, the journey to New Zealand citizenship really reveals a system that is demanding but ultimately grounded in pragmatism.
Yeah.
It requires undeniable proof of physical commitment through the 1350-day rule, but it forgives the lack of academic English in favor of real conversational ability. It's a process that balances the historical weight of restorative laws, like the Samoan Amendment, with the modern reality of global migration.
You are trading a conditional residency for absolute security. But the true cost isn't the paperwork or the fees. It's the profound choice you make about your identity and your ties to your homeland.
Absolutely.
So I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We have dissected the forms, the legal frameworks, the historical apologies, and the ceremonies. But when that mayor finally hands you the certificate, does that piece of paper actually change how you feel about the place you live?
That's the real question.
Or does this entire arduous bureaucratic journey simply force the law to finally catch up to where your heart has been all along? Think about that next time you pull your passport out of the drawer.